Welcome again everybody on YouTube. It's good to be back, another session in the garage. So we're going to continue with our gearbox conversion, and we're going to have a go with our messing around with shortening our gear stick arrangement on this episode. So hopefully that'll be, we'll knock that on the head on this one and that'll be a success. And then all we'll have left to do is finalise our starter motor arrangement. I have ordered for that and has arrived today, an ST170 starter motor. So we know that suits the engine, and the pivot points for the flywheel will be correct to that, and that does live in that corner there on the engine on the ST170. So probably mean rearranging the holes I've already made, but hey ho, we'll cover that in the next one. So for this one we'll concentrate on this gear stick and see how we get on. Alrighty-o, let's see how we get on with this then. Okay, so after looking on YouTube to see what others have done with this, there's a couple of things to be aware of. There's a couple of locating pins in between there and there, which will make pulling this whole assembly off a little difficult. Those that have done this on YouTube, I've taken this whole tail piece off. I want to avoid doing that if I may, because I just don't want the hassle of doing that. Just realised I've damaged my neutral switch, not that I'm going to need it. I'll probably just cut those off anyway. So first things first, let's undo those and see what sort of room we have got. Yeah, so those pins are holding, and there's not much room up and down for them to come off. So my thinking is those pins are not going to be any use to us, because the one that's there is off centered to the one that's there, according to what I've seen. So my thinking is simply cut them off the hacksaw blade. We're not going to need them anymore anyway, because we're going to move this up, and I'll have to pull them out and cut them off anyway. So let's just cut them off like this. Right, that gives us room for that to move about. Right, okay, I think we'll put the screws back in for a second. The next thing I want to do is see what's going on inside there. We need to release the gear stick from that lot. Now, I've already had this cover off in the past, but normally this will be full of oil, and so oil will go pouring out of there. So be aware of that if you're taking this off for the first time. And what that reveals is that roll pin there that we need to remove. Unless we can grab it from this side, there's not very much of it sticking out there, so we'll have to go see if I can drag it to pull it out. I don't think that's going to work. No, so we'll have to tap it through. We seem to be jamming up against something here. So on the other side of that, we've got this here, which you need to pull off, but there's a spring in there. So you have to be careful as we pull it out. So try and do this one-handed. She's not very easy. There we go. There. I'll keep that spring safe. And we'll come back to that. Right, let's get that out of the way. Okay, let's pull this thing out the back here and see what that reveals. another spring, and there should be something up in there. There it goes. Right, so that's what lives up inside there. Over there, keep that in order. Right, that should mean should now be able to push my pin right out, I would have thought. Let's try again. Yeah, that seems promising. There we go, there's my roll pin coming out the other side, so that's good news. Keep that all safe. That should mean now that we can remove this. Pull the screws off. Super, that's that bit off. Well, that relieves is see where I cut those off now, and that exposes what goes on inside of there. So we've got a tube to cut down, that to cut down, and this to cut down. Right, so I think the first thing we need to do is cut this shaft down and drill our hole in the correct place first. So what I'm going to do is measure between my holes. Now, a simple way to get a measurement, a central measurement between two holes, is to measure the edge, that edge there to that edge there. Put screws in them. To find the centre of those two screws, you measure from that face to that face, and that will give you your centres. Which is 102 millimeters. If you move it across, you can see that goes centre to centre there, and if you go over the top there, it's still all the same. And if you move the screws, so the flats are pointing in the same direction, so we've got a high point there, you'll see that essential. So 102 millimeters is our centre to centre on there. So what we need to do is move that hole down 102 millimeters. So what I'm simply thinking of doing is moving this up the shaft the required 102 millimeters. So right on the end of the roll pin in place. So if I put that back in there, we can, if I make a scriber mark on that, something like so. Measure up 102 millimeters. And put a cut on there, just a little mark. And then that's bang on where we need that to be, because you can front face of that up to that mark there. So my thinking is, so I can get this hole drilled in accurately without having to take all this off and put it on a bench press, is tack this in place just there while it's there. And then I can drill from this side, drill from that side, gently from both ways, and meet up in the middle, hopefully without snapping the drill bit. The first thing I want to do is make sure we can accurately get this lined up. So we want this to have the same orientation as the flat across there. Okay, so I've got an idea of how to hold this in place using magnets. So we put a magnet first of all on our mark, so we keep that in place, and put some more in there to help hold it where it should be. Oh, I had to touch and fiddle. Right, so back on our mark, that moves slightly. Okay, so that's it needs to be. Find a way of eyeballing this to line it up. I think if I just look across there, I can eyeball it to line up. That's looking pretty good. I think I'll preheat this as well, because it's going to be quite a lot to weld into, that is. Right, okay. Right, the next challenge is going to be drilling it. This is really testing how straight I can drill freehand. We'll see how this is going now. Oh, no. We're pretty close. I'll put the other bit back in. Super. Lovely. Right, so that's phase one done. Next bit. Oh, I'm going out of shot a little bit. Sorry about that. Next bit, lock this off. There. Sure we'll be able to use that pin for something else somewhere along the line. Right, let's remove all this. The next thing we need to hopefully you can do is now tap that back off. Right, let's eyeball this next. We need to move this up all the way to there, so let's see how much we have to just lock this off. Lock this off here somewhere, and maybe we can pick up a support from this back edge here onto a front screw there to give this support. Lovely. So that's that hacked off. Right, I think it's fair to say we're now past the point of no return. So if it doesn't work, I've just made a scrap gearbox. It looks promising. What I think I'll do is get it into a gear, put it loosely together and see if it still selects. Right, I may have dropped the clanger here. I can't find the gear again. This is just flopping about in the wind, and I've managed to find gears in the past. Like, before I started filming it, I fiddled about with this and had all this apart to make sure I could find gears and what have you, but this doesn't want to know. It's just flopping about in the wind, which means I'm going to have to take the tail shaft off, which I didn't want to do. So, but it is what it is. So I'm going to take the gearbox back off the engine, stand it up and take the tail shaft off. Right, let's see what's occurring, why we can't get this lot to play games. I have no idea which way is what on this. Okay, looks like we're selecting gears at least. What we'll do is find neutral. Right, I wonder if they're all lined up like that, does that make it neutral? I wonder. What I think I need to do is a little bit of googling first and come back before I do any real damage. Okay, so after doing a bit of googling, I've discovered, so those when they're all lined up is neutral. You can tell that by hold that one, twist that one, and you can turn them. So that's in neutral there. If we move one of these, one's first, second, the other one's third, fourth. I can't move which way around, but and then that one's reverse and fifth. So if we mess around with this one, for example, that's now, well, either fifth or reverse. So you can see that is now turning. I can't stop that turning. So we put that back into neutral, and hey ho, we're back to square one. So what that means is, well, I'm not putting this back together with a sealant yet because I want to test my theory. If as we put this back together, that should mean that all I simply need to do is tuck that in between in there as we put it back together. So that should be neutral there now. What I'll do is loosely put a couple of bolts back in there, loosely put it all back together and see if we can change gear. I'm just going to use a 5mm screw just to put in there just for now, just to hold it in place instead of putting the roll pin in it. It'll be a pain to get back out again. I'll go back on there. Yeah, should miss that, so that should be okay to go back on there. So the moment of truth, will it select gears? But that is indeed excellent news. Okay, so I haven't turned this gearbox into a piece of scrap. Happy days. So the next thing I need to shorten is this. Now I've got some funny seals on the end. But what I saw the RX-7 guys doing is simply lock this off and silicone around that seal. My first intention was to cut out the 102mm and weld this back together so keep the seals on the ends. Which I still might yet do because the seals, yeah, I think that's what I will do. In fact, I think I'll lop out 102 out the centre of it and weld this together to shorten that tube there. Having said that, I've just measured how much 102mm is going to be. That means I'm going to be welding very close to the edges of these, and it'll probably melt both seals. So now I understand why they don't do that. So I shall simply lop off 102mm then, and stick it back in with some RTV silicone. Okie dokie, right, that's got that chopped off ready. I'm wondering, you see in the background I've got an O-ring kit that suddenly appeared, if I can stick an O-ring on the end. So let's take that all apart again and have a play, see if that's possible. Well, the answer is probably if you can get it to hook in. I reckon this is definitely a possibility. Yes, well that's definitely kept that in there nicely. Whether it stay in is another thing. Maybe I'd back it up with a bit of RTV silicone just to help keep it in place. Okay, let's see if that will settle back on there. It's too long. It's a wrong pipe grommet. Yeah. Get the damn thing out now. Well, I measured it. I took 102mm off it. Try the other one in. Must have mixed them up. I must have mixed them up. Okay, so that's the one I need. Right, okay, so I'll clean that one up. And that's the way to go forward with that one. Right, not that one. That's strange. Right, the O-ring is definitely the way forward, so that's good news. Lovely. Right. Now we're heading in the right direction. Let's put it all back together. Right. Thankfully, I've got a bit of RTV silicone left over from messing about the other days, it happened, so that's good news. Lovely, right, that's all cleaned up. Right, that's evaporating off of there. I shall check Google for my torque wrench settings. Okay, I totally failed to find torque wrench settings for those bolts. So I'm going to set my torque wrench at 40 pounds and try it at that. I don't want to go too much because it'll strip the bolts. Right. I think 40 pounds is probably around about there or thereabouts to it. So let's gunk it up and see what we get. Okay, so if you're doing this and you do lose your gears like I just did, it's actually not too bad to get the tail shaft off. I was afraid of doing this and it wasn't as bad as I thought. So make sure these are lined up together like so, and put a bit of gasket, RTV gasket on there. You don't need a lot because it's a very nice face on there. We're putting loads of it on here and it's going to just squeeze into the gearbox and make an almighty mess. see why these gearboxes can take the power they can, even though they're small. Got nice decent bearings on them, which is nice to see. So it's certainly going to be up to the 160 brake or so thereabouts that engine's going to be. Right, so as we're putting this down, pointing in the right direction, I want to make sure our selector or remote rod is just tucking in between those. Anyway, in between them, once it's in between them somewheres, and down we go. There's no obvious evidence that these have got any Loctite on them or anything, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. 40 might be a bit much. A bit nervous on that one. Right, let's knock it down to 30. Even 30 feels like it might be a bit on the heavy side. I think I'll just go by feel. So you don't want to go breaking or stripping the threads on this thing. Alright, that's as tight as I dare do those. Let's I can just feel like they're gonna snap on me or strip on me, so I would guess that's just less than 30. Those two locked down at 30, but the others can't have been far off because it didn't feel a lot different to them too. Right, let's get a bit of silicone in there, clean that out. And this is really just to hold that O-ring in place as much as anything. Isn't that attractive? Fear not, I have a plan. There we go. Let's smarten that up. Oh, it's a bit of a trick to this, and we spin the box around so hopefully you can see what's happening here. Yeah. Let's wipe that off. So we'll do that again. Right, so as we're putting this on, we need to have this going in at the same time. So remember the two holes point towards us. Pop that on. And then plonk. That's into position. Right, let's get our roll pin back in there. You'll find a job for this. Lovely. And now we'll work out how to put this indent ball thing back in over here. How does that work again, I wonder? Right, okay, so I guess the spring fits up inside there. And that little ball bearing, that's where the ball bearing lives, in there, like so. Right, happy days. So this only appears to go in one way. Oh, I see. That presses the ball bearing, presses up against the side of there to give that a bit of tension both ways. That's why that'll only go in that way, I guess. I really should have taken notice of how this came out. Yes, okay, that makes sense to me. Okay, so it looks like it goes in the flat towards that, and the ball bearing runs on there and gives that a couple of bits of tension, which helps keep the gear stick in the middle when you're in neutral. drop the ball bearing in, use the spring to line up the ball bearing, and screw that down. See how that feels. Ah yeah, that feels good. Happy days. Right, well, this has got a gasket on it, so we can stick that back together. We have to make sure we put new oil back in all of this. I think I might have to put, I think common sense tells me that this one needs to go back in place before I tighten that one up fully. So let's clean this up. Because this has got a little spring arrangement on it as well, which pushes the gearbox, the gear stick the other way. So you've got a spring on either side, keeping the gear stick central. Looks like the mean way. I'm not a gearbox guru. But that seems to make sense to me. So now, if that I haven't made a complete pig's ear of that, should change gear. Oh, look at that. Right, I'm quite pleased with how that's come out. So I'm calling that a success. Definitely very doable. So the gear stick is now moved forward just about 4 inches, 102mm. And I was concerned that I'd have to sort of brace that down for it to change gear in that, but it changes gear smoothly, backwards and forwards, in and out of reverse, making all the selections nicely. The only thing I didn't expect to have to do is to split the tail off. So if you're going to do this, you might as well do that first as last. So get the gearbox up and end, take the tail off. I don't know what the torque wrench settings were for that. I'd say they were about £28, possibly just less than £30 foot. I had my torque wrench set at 30, and it wasn't a long extension, which doesn't make it that accurate. And I was getting nervous to let him click out at 30, so I'd say it's just less than 30. But if anybody knows any better than that, please put it in the comments and let me know. Right, well, that's good news. We've got a reshifted gear stick, a reshifted shifter. So that is now will fit the Escort much nicer, so I don't have to worry about cutting up the gearbox tunnel anymore. I can reuse the existing hole in the gearbox tunnel, which means I can, there's a strengthening bit just after the gearbox hole in the tunnel, which I can leave in place, so that's good news. I don't have to go cutting that out, which was a worry. So really, because I'm very close to cleaning off and under sealing the bottom of the Escort. All the welding has been done now, so the real next thing to work out is where the gearbox is going to mount. So I'll be fiddling about with that, but I wanted to see if I could get the gear stick in the right place before I worried about that. So this is a definite step forward on that front. So thanks for watching. Next video will be back on the starter motor, see if we can rectify that, and a culmination of everything that's been learned along the way. So thanks for watching. Please do subscribe, and I hope this is useful to you. And apparently these boxes work well in RX-8s by all accounts, so this is how to do that. And this opens up a whole world of possibilities for this gearbox, especially with the turret tube like that, because the later ones, the Mark II NB gearboxes don't have that. So it's only the Mark 1 gearboxes, and they're still quite cheap at the moment, relatively speaking, so 150 quid. Well, this one I had for free when I bought my Mark 1 Escorts, Mazda rather. It came with it. I think the guy was just glad to get rid of it, so hopefully there's nothing wrong with it on that front. But oh, I've got to do that up. Just realised I left that bit loose there. Right, I'll do that up after. But okay, thanks again for watching, and look forward to the next one, and please subscribe if you don't already. This is where we find out this done up. It won't change gear. Phew. Let's tighten up as well. It's easy to get distracted with these things, see? Happy days. Gotta love a post reel, ain't you?